Ready?
How's it, everybody? Tonight we are talking sports. As parents, we all want our kids to excel in different areas. We do our best to expose them to a lot of different activities. And then when you start to see them grasp onto certain skills as they get older, you look for ways to fine tune those skills. Well, in this case, we're talking about basketball. We have two powerhouse coaches here with us right now. Coach Dean Shimamoto, the former Iolani boys basketball coach for 10 seasons. He led the team through 3 state championship titles and 4 ILH crowns. He and Coach Josh Benton, another powerhouse coach right here, are now coaching different age groups for the boys' youth basketball club team called Takeover. Thanks for being with us, Coach Dean and Coach Josh.
All right. Thanks, coaches.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks,
Yeah,
fellas.
thanks for having us. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
and full disclosure for all of our listeners, we actually know these guys, outside of basketball. So Noli and Brooke, why don't you tell everybody how you know Coach Dean?
I grew up playing basketball with Coach Dino in Iea Newtown Rec League.
right.
I think he got Mr. Basketball Award as we were growing up as 10-year-olds or something like that. Yeah, Dean? Or you're Mr.
I think you
Basketball.
were one of the few or only females on our team that we played at Newtown, the Newtown Magic.
Yep. You
Oh,
made
that's
me
way
better.
back.
Way.
Wow.
Way back. I have been friends with Dean. Gosh, Dean, I don't even know. We're gonna date ourselves. Over 25 years, right?
Some point in high school, maybe more than that, right? How long we're coming up on like a 30th reunion or something at some point
Jeez.
soon. So yeah,
Yeah.
maybe
So
longer.
been known you since high school. Been to parties with you in college. If we're being
Oh.
honest.
Yeah,
But,
that's,
you
that's
know,
another
clean-
podcast.
clean-
That's another podcast.
Right.
Yeah. Just clean kind. We didn't do too much.
And then I know Josh because Josh is a longtime former Hawaii News Now senior producer on
Oh.
Sunrise. That's right. And he and I are actually from the same hometown, Po'o
That's
Valley
right.
House. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Represent
Yep.
P-Town.
And a funny story about me and Dean. So do you guys ever remember Job Swaps, the series Job Swaps, when I was swapping jobs and profiling people? So I actually profiled Alika Smith. He was the coach of the Puno basketball team at the time. And they faced off against Dean and his Iolani team. And I was like, oh man, I feel kind of bad because here I am, like profiling Puno like all the way. And then when it came down to it, who won?
Well, you know, I was like, I've known Steph for a while now, and she profiled Alika at Punahou. It hurt a little bit. So fortunately, we came out with the W on that one.
Yeah. But then when Marino played Iolani later on, what year was that? 2000. Let me see. I have it down here. 2013.
Mm-hmm.
The Spartans won.
They did. That was that game. That was that Maryland game. But yes, the Spartans have a
All
incredible
right, now that
program.
we broke you guys in a little bit, let's start talking now. Okay, so first off, thank you so much for giving up your time. I know you guys are both busy. You guys are both family men, and you're also volunteering your time as coaches. And I don't know, Noli and Brooke, if you've seen this, but it's kind of like all too often when we like sign our kids up for sports, they always like come back and say, oh, sorry, but can you guys volunteer to coach? Because there's no coach. Like there aren't any coaches. So I guess that kind of brings us to my first question for Coach Dean and Coach Josh is like, what are the biggest motivators for you guys to step in and be coach? I know, Coach Dean, you left after 10 seasons saying that you wanted to spend more time with your family, but you're back at it again. So what's the biggest motivators for you, Coach Dean and Coach Josh, to coach?
Well, both of us right now, we're coaching our kids. We've taken some other kids along for the ride here, but it started with having a team for our children. And that's where it is with me. So even though I stopped coaching at Iolani to spend time with my family, or that's, the reason, I mean, I am spending time with my family. It might be while I'm coaching, but that's it. And we get to share these experiences and all the great things that I enjoyed while I was coaching at Iolani. I get to do with my own kids. So that's the biggest motivator really right now.
Yeah, I mean, and very similarly to what Dean said, for me, it's being with my kids, seeing him grow. But we've had the same core group of kids for maybe like 3 or 4 years now, and to just see them grow with my own son, it's awesome. And then obviously, as you said, Steph, can't do it without the support of my wife Sherry and my family. My daughter Emily, I feel bad like she gets dragged along to all of our games, and we have like 5 games sometimes one weekend, and she has to come. So but it, like Dean said, it's really a family experience now, and something that we've learned to grow. And that's not to say there's not struggles along the way, but I really enjoy watching the kids grow and grow together.
So I know you guys are doing this, on your free time too. How serious do you think that you are taking this? It's a volunteer job. I mean, it's got to be totally different from your high school coaching job, Dean. And Josh, I know this is serious for you too, because I mean, you've led your team, in an undefeated season as well, Takeover. So, I mean, like, how serious do you kind of approach this?
Yeah, I mean, when I started coaching, I had hair. So, but yeah, it does get pretty intense. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say that I don't, want to compete every time we're out there. I do get intense. I yell at the kids, but I'm not ever yelling in a like kind of a way that's like putting them down. I feel like like I'm just trying to get the best out of them. And I hope they feel that way too. But like I'm pushing them to their limits because I know they can be even better, right? You see the potential in a lot of these kids, and you're like, hey man, like just give me your all, for 40 minutes or whatever it is when you're out there. Just give me everything you got. And that's basically it. Yeah, you just want to push them and see them grow to be their very best.
I tell you, it's serious for me, but it's not serious in the sense that we're going out to win championships. Having coached before, I think the most valuable thing that I have is perspective, and the perspective on how to prioritize what's important. So I'll get into the kids. I mean, no doubt, like I want to hold them accountable in the same way that you want to raise your children, right? Like you want them to compete, you want them to work hard, you want them to have good attitudes. And obviously that transcends sport, that transcends basketball for sure. And it's kind of like raising kids, and that's how I approach it. So when it comes to those types of things, I'm really serious about it. If we say to do it a certain way, because maybe I think that's going to benefit them later on, even if they don't understand it now, I'm going to expect them to do it, and I'm going to hold them accountable. And sometimes it hurts, but it's one of those lessons, just again, as a parent, that is going to help them later on. So, I mean, it's serious, but not for the reason of winning or losing.
I don't want to get too far ahead for our listeners who may be new to the game. I know that there's a lot of parents interested in signing their kids up for sports, but what is the difference between club sports and say like I-9, KC, things like that? I actually, it was a learning process for me. I had to go through it to see, but I want to hear from your guys' perspective. If you could explain to those listening right now, what's the difference between club sports and like I-9 and even high school sports?
Well, I look at it as there's two things. There's club and there's community. And a lot of the leagues that you hear about, like I would say I-9 started out more as a community league. And then from a basketball perspective, you have KC in town or KBA out on the windward side. Back when I was playing, it was the PAL leagues, and back in the Newtown days, the military leagues. And those were community type teams where a parent signs up and they get assigned to a team. And sometimes you find one within your area, as was the case in PAL, but you get assigned to a team. So everybody participates. It's really just a kind of an introduction a lot of times to the sport, even though you are competing. I think club kind of takes over where that leaves off. And the people that want to get more serious into it, and I think this is for every sport, baseball, football, soccer, once you move beyond that and say, hey, I think I want to do more. I want to focus on this. And I think this is something that my child enjoys. So I'm going to give them more training, more days a week, more serious competition. And that's where the club level, I think, comes in. And it's different ages for different sports, but that's the distinction I make is between community and club. It just gets a little bit more serious because I think you show more interest.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I think, KAC, I9, KBA, all of those are great. They're usually, where you start, and you need that foundation for sure. And then as you get more interested, as your kid gets more interested, then you start kind of, the progression and graduation up to, club, and hopefully farther than that.
Mm. And Brooke and Knowles, we've had this conversation before because again, I'm new at this and I often seek your guys' advice because your kids are a little bit older than my kids. But Brooke, how do you make that distinction? And can you try and talk about your perspective or your point of view on whether or not club sports carries more weight than high school sports?
Ooh, that's a hard question. I think I agree with both Josh and Dean that just club is way more serious. I think playing time is not going to be guaranteed. It gets a little bit more from a coaching standpoint. You have to understand that as a parent when you're signing up for that. So more competitive. But I would think more development too. But I fully agree that community league is a really good place to start in all the sports. Because for kids when they're younger, you want to be around good families and you want to be around good fundamentals and be around different kids, not from your own school, whatever school you go to. I think that's super important to learn socially how to get along with all kinds of kids, right? So for us, that's what we kind of did. Our path was community league for all the sports, and then kind of figuring out when to go into club. All three of our kids are in club in every sport now. And we also believe in multiple sports. We talked about this before too, but I think that's a big, for us, our family, that's been helpful. We're starting to see it pay off with our boys who are both in high school now too, underclassmen. But yeah, I think that's just the difference. And I think high school it's different. I think there's a pride level too when you're playing for your school, which I think is really cool. But I will say it's different. I think from when we're all growing up a little bit. I think a lot of the recruiting happens on the club side in different sports. I don't know if Dean and Josh agree. I'm not familiar with basketball too much, but I know from the sports my kids are in, I think it's evolving where a lot of the college recruiting gets kind of more heavily done in the club side, depending on your club. High school is still really awesome, but it's a different feel from before, in my opinion. Nothing bad or good, it's just different. I think it's evolving, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I agree totally with Brooke and Josh and Dean that there's a community level and then there's a club level and then you have your high school. But I feel like from community to club or community to high school, that progression is needed to see what your kid's passion is. And maybe they don't even like the sport, but to push them to the level where they can figure it out for themselves, because that's kind of, as you get older, as your kids get older, right, you have to concentrate a little bit more on something rather than the other. And club and high school is a good way, like intermediate JV levels in the high school side are good ways to see, hey, does my kid really love it? And then how far can I push them with this passion? Because you want to pursue their passion, right? Support their passion. So it's a good way for anyone to get involved, I think, with club sports. It's another level to continue their journey along the way. It's a long journey.
No, what I really, as you guys were talking, and I think you touched on it a little bit, was just the social side of sports. Like the people that I know from sports is endless. I mean, basketball has been such a big part of me, and playing in community when you have this mix of people, right? Whether it's part private school, part public school, or someone from here, someone from there, that's how you expand your circles, your social circle. And so it was so important. Like even sometimes we have teams that sprout up. My kids were at Iolani from kindergarten, and teams sprout up with kids in third grade, all second grade, or all kindergarten, or whatever it is, and they're trying to play together. And sometimes I almost shy away from it because they see those kids all the time. I want them to see other kids. I want them to be a part of whatever it is in that community, if they were playing KC, KBA, PAL, or whatever, and then they get to play against other kids that they see and somehow make friends with them. I mean, those connections have lasted for so long. For me, that, you know, even when we're out and I'm with my wife and she sees somebody, I see someone, and I haven't seen them forever, and they're from somewhere else, and it's like, how do you know that guy? And it's oh, I played with them when we were little, and that's just such an endless list, and those connections have been so great over so long, that social aspect of not just playing in club with the same types of kids that are going to continue on to your same school, or only private school kids, or only, you know, whatever. I just think that mix is so important socially.
100% agree with that. Like, I'll say this too. I think, you know, for parents listening that have the younger kids who are just starting out and wanting to try sports, I really think community league is a really good way to start, right? Like, but for that reason, just getting to know different kids. We purposely, like, just like Dean, we purposely, my husband and I, shied away from. We made sure that we were on teams that had kids from other schools too, all different schools, on purpose. You know, we didn't want to, you know, have a kindergarten team that was only from their school, or first grade team, because I think it's because now when they're, you know, in club, you're playing with kids from different schools still, and it's the bonds that they have. It's really cool to see that. And having played sports growing up, and my husband at a higher level than my, way higher than I played, but you know, that's such a cool dynamic and a life lesson in all of that too, beyond winning and losing a game.
You know, aside from the social aspect, though, I mean, like, just like you, Noli said, like when I was growing up, I totally did not see this many club sports. And it honestly didn't feel that competitive. I'm not sure if I'm seeing it from a different perspective because I'm a parent now, but man, I mean, when I stepped into this world, you know, I mean, community league, and then just learning about the different clubs, it's a whole nother just world environment. You feel the competitiveness out there. I don't know, Josh, if you want to talk about it and explain that for those listening, what that's all about.
Yeah, I think, I mean, like you said, like growing up when we played, there pretty much were no clubs, right? And then now I feel like there's club in every single sport. And I do think it's like it gets serious way earlier, you know,
Mhm.
and there's all these studies about specializing in sports and things like that. But, you know, to a certain extent, I think the kids feel like, well, if I'm not doing this, I could be behind. But then I try to remind them it's always like a marathon, right? It's a long game. It's not living for the right now. We're living for the, you know, hopefully later on down the line in higher levels. But it definitely starts a lot earlier and it's a lot more serious, I feel like, you know, because like I said, growing up when we played basketball, there were no clubs. We just all played in whatever leagues, and certain teams stuck together. You know, I had the pleasure, I guess you could say that, to play against Derek Lowe and Ryan Hirata, and it wasn't really a pleasure because we were all getting smashed. But you play against those guys, you know. But and then even then, they weren't really club ball. You know, it wasn't really club ball, right? But now it's like there's a club here, and you know, like we're just one of the many clubs across the state. You know, and it's actually cool to see. I think, you know, and it's cool to see kids. I think, and Dean can chime in, obviously, but I think kids are a lot more skilled and technical now than they were when we played. I feel like, at least.
Yeah, we get that mix though. I think, you know, the kids individually have been exposed to so much more training, but I feel like they've been less exposed to the free play that kind of builds that IQ in the sport without the actual training. And that's been a lot of talk nationally and in a lot of sports where, and especially basketball, where it's everything is structured, or, you know, there's so much there's so much less informal play. You know, the things that I talk about with kids that are older, especially in high school, and you know, those guys, I would say, what do you do in the off season? Where do you play? And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, I'm in this league. I'm going to Vegas with that team or this club. And I'm like, no. Where do you play? Like, where do you go play pickup? They have no idea, you know? So certain of the goals became like, hey, go play a pickup game. And he's like, and it's just foreign. How do I get into that game? Where do I go? Well, look around, talk, because the things that they're learning in those environments are just things that maybe they can be taught, but they're not grasped as well if they learn it on their own. Like, for example, if you're playing in a 5 and you go to the court, wherever it is, whether it's a gym or outdoor court, and there's a 2-game wait because there's 20 guys and you're playing a game and you play up to a certain score, if you are that guy that can't guard somebody, no one wants you on their team. So the next time you go to that court, they're going to bypass you and ask someone else. Or you're that guy that comes down and chucks up shots that you're not making or turns it over a number of times. Again, same situation. And you learn real quick, like, hey, I better be a better shooter. So I'm going to go work on it. I better take care of the ball. I better put effort in on defense, and as much as a coach will say that to you over and over and over, the pride hit that you take playing out there on the court, amongst peers and people, some that you don't even know, you learn so much quicker, when you get into those scenarios. And the kids are more trained. They are more athletic. They are more resilient, I think, physically. But again, it's that part that is missing to an extent, is where they just get to play and figure some stuff out for themselves.
So are you saying that, are we going in the wrong direction? Are we being too driven?
Well, I think the goal is to try and mix it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's not to overschedule. I mean, part of it is that you mentioned it earlier, the multi-sport thing, which is good. Right. And I kind of have a take on that, but we'll touch on that maybe a little later. But part of the multi-sport, I think part of the free play, trying to figure out, because I think things swing, right? Like a pendulum, like, oh, they're undertrained. This is too open. We need some structure. We need to train them. We can do this. We can do that. And then hopefully it swings back a little bit where you get this medium balance of play. Because I don't know if you guys remember it during the early parts of 2000, there was the and one basketball craze. I don't know if you remember that, but it was fancy ball handling, crazy stuff. It was all the rage, and that was all park. So it probably was like, hey, a little too much of that. Let's swing it back. Let's swing it back the other way, and now you get a lot of structure. And there's probably something in between that's going to make some really great athletes and guys competing in sports, basketball or otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, honestly, like some of the kids, I've heard somebody say like, hey, they're just drilled out because they just are so used to like this particular situation, this particular dribble and all of those things. But like what Dean is saying is so true. Like you need to play pickup, you need to play the game in order to build your IQ, because you're not going to always be faced with this situation. You're going to use this dribble and you're going to take that shot. You just need to do it all, right? And that's the beauty of sports in general, right? I mean, you're faced with a problem. How are you going to solve it, right? There are many different ways you can solve it, but you need to know in that moment, how are you going to do it? So I think there's a lot to what he's saying, with the kids being skilled and more athletic and all of that. But yeah, there's definitely like, they just think that one move can work in every situation. It's not true.
This might be obvious, but what's the driving force? Why do you guys think that it's like so fiercely competitive out there? And what's obviously, I mean, parents, you want your kid to succeed and you want them to be the best. I mean, how did we get here? I mean, and what's the goal?
What's the end goal? Yeah. What's the end goal?
I just feel like entering into this, it's like, and I hear it everywhere when I'm like sitting in the stands with other parents, oh, hey, did you hear about this? You heard about this clinic, or you heard about, hey, maybe you should check this out. You know what I mean? Like, it's always like trying to get ahead, like, and I'm trying to put this in perspective, because it's like back in the day, it's like AYSO, hey, where can I get this ice cream sandwich? I mean, it's like way more slower pace. Now it's just like, so like, whoa, like everybody's like trying to, I mean, I don't want to be like, get too personal, but kind of one up each other, want to stand out. And it's become very, I mean, you can feel it.
Yeah, for sure.
Nowadays, the ability to compare has never been greater than any other time, I think, in life, because of social media, and everyone posting everything and what they're doing and where they're at and what their kid is able to do, where they're playing, so the ability to compare, I think it was ignorance in the past where you didn't know. I mean, you really didn't know. If you were comparing, you're comparing against the kid down the street or some good kid that you maybe heard about or seen a couple times in the league. Now you're seeing some, 8, 9, 10, and some like a 12-year-old dunking, and you're, what's going on? I got to get better training. I'm behind, and you seeing that kind of stuff, I think leads people to go out and seek this, just to saying, I'm behind. I gotta catch up. I'm not doing my child the right, I'm doing them a disservice by not putting them in this, that, or the other. And again, the ability to compare now is just so different than what it was. And I think that changes everyone's minds and how to approach it.
Yeah. And I think parents, honestly, too, though, like we all get caught up, right? And when we see this kid, it's, oh, he's really good. And I think all parents, we need to remind ourselves again. I'm going to bring it back to that marathon. It's a long game. Like right now, if your kid is, elementary or intermediate, whatever, we're playing for later on and not what right now. Because I mean, obviously, you want to train and do all those things right now to prepare yourself, but we want to really, really get you to, high school, in my opinion, get you to that level of sports. And I think some parents, including myself, right, we get caught up in the competitiveness. And like you're saying, Steph, you feel like if you're not training on this day or you're not with this guy, then you're falling behind, right? And that's not the case. And what I see is that the parents tend to put the pressure on the kids, and that's the problem, right? Because we got to understand that they're just kids at the end of the day, and we can't treat them like robots. Like, I'm going to program you to go and drop 25 points this game. It doesn't work that way, right? They have feelings and emotions, and they're going through a lot of stuff, and all they know is what their dad or mom is telling them. And if we're just drilling them the whole time, why can't you be better? And why you got to do this and that? Like, that's not good for them and their mental and emotional health.
So what do you guys as coaches and dads tell your specific child as you're the coach and the parent when they're not living up to their potential, I guess? What would your
We might have
How
to
do
use
you
the
guys do that?
sensor. No, I'm just I'm just
beep, beep, beep. Yeah. I'm just curious because
we're all calm when the kids aren't around, and you just find yourself getting into this mode where you're about to explode. Like, I mean, you lose total sanity and the ability to be composed when your kid is out there doing something. And I'm going to say what we try to do, right, is focus on attitude and effort and focus. So if they're not giving it their all, good attitude, then, it really raises that level, I guess, as far as trying to get on them. But I'll tell you what the funny part is for kids, for parents, right? And especially parent coaches, is you as a parent and coach tend to justify that because it sounds great, right? Attitude and effort, guys, and all the parents nod their head. But then as a parent coach, you then justify, why you missed that shot? Because you weren't trying. You weren't trying your hardest.
Mhm.
And then it becomes about missing shots. You know why you let that guy go by you? Because you weren't in the right position. I told you, you weren't listening. You weren't focused. And you justify everything with then back to attitude and effort. So you yell at them about everything. And I think that's the thing that I started to find myself doing. I don't know if a lot of people even realize they do that, but I started to realize, hey, I'm doing that. I don't know that I could stop myself still, but I realize that I'm doing it. But is that justification about the right reasons? And then you turn everything else into that. And I don't know. It, again, lose all sanity.
Yeah.
How are
Yeah,
you, Josh?
I mean, yeah, I'm not perfect. And Dean has seen it, and he's helped me through some of it, honestly, because with my own son, it kind of like it comes in waves. And I think like you need to remove yourself sometimes because I was that dad who was always drilling him and all that. And then you see him kind of pull away. And then I took a look at myself and I was like, I need to really look at myself because, the sport that we love together, now I'm driving him away from it because I'm expecting perfection every time out. But, he's 11, 12 years old. Like I can't expect that. Right. And when parents come to me and they ask me, and I get it often, I had it last week actually, like, hey, how come my kid's not performing? I get so mad at him. And I said, I've been there. I said, I think you need to take a couple steps back and just try a different approach. Because if whichever one you're working, right, or doing it is like you're either drilling them all the time and yelling at them, or you're super encouraging, and it's got to be, I think Dean can speak to this too. It's got to be somewhere in between, right? Because we don't always want to be like, hey, that was a great turnover, right? We don't want to like always encourage that, but we understand mistakes happen, right? And you know what I mean? And it gets to be, I think, to a point where it cannot be one extreme or the other. We do want to encourage them more, but I always believe that you do have to correct them when something doesn't go wrong, right? But you don't have to like drill them and make like it's the end of the world.
And then because you gotta see them at the dinner table after practice, right? So yeah,
exactly.
But I mean,
their jobs are hard.
Yeah, but as parents, we can all use this kind of advice because it's easier said than done. And these days, I feel like even more so than when I was younger, parents are a lot more passionate out there
and involved and around. Yeah,
yes.
Watching practices
Absolutely.
and everything, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But it's also a beautiful thing to a certain extent too, right? I mean, we love to have parent involvement and parents being passionate and sharing that love for the game. I just think there's got to be some sort of separation, and Dean coached that at a much higher level than me, so he can speak to it too. But I just think that it's great, but at the same time, like for most of us, we're volunteers, and parents just should also understand and respect that.
What is your guys' secret to unlocking the inner like the undiscovered abilities that a young athlete has and tapping into that? I mean, my sister's totally big on basketball, and she sent me this video of who's the head coach for the Warriors?
Steve Kerr.
Yeah, Steve Kerr. And she's saying that like it's really interesting because she watches him and that like he has a different approach for each athlete. But he I think she saw how he discovered that because I guess it's like his approach with Steph Curry is different from I'm so bad. Who's the other guy who's a little bit like quieter and
Klay Thompson.
Yeah. So she showed so she showed me this video and then she's like, and then like he was being interviewed afterwards and like I guess Klay Thompson didn't respond to his approach which was more aggressive and like he needed a different approach to unlock his like potential and then he started like showing like improvements and like scoring and like being really good during games. But what is your guys' approach and secret to unlocking a player's abilities?
I think it's exactly that. I mean, the ability to understand that every kid is different and they respond to different things. They have different motivations. They have different reasons for being there. I really don't think it changes all that much than when you're trying to build a relationship with anyone, regardless of sport. You want to find out what they like, what they don't like. It's first building that relationship and figuring out a lot about them and getting them to understand you as well and that trust level. So that understanding, I think you have a guy like Steve Kerr who's been a part of a lot of championship programs, a lot of coaches. He was under Phil Jackson, Greg Popovich, very, very successful coaches. And their styles were dramatically different, but he was able to pull a lot of things away from each of these coaches. But I'm sure the common thread was that they were able to figure out what got each guy going. And sometimes that meant talking about wine or something off the court with other guys or politics, while some other guys like Phil Jackson with a Kobe or Michael Jordan, it was about basketball, and wins and W's. And you can't treat Michael Jordan the same way you're going to treat some other guy on the team. And that understanding, that relationship building, I think is so important. And, I've failed tons and tons of times with guys over my years of coaching. And I feel like I was more successful with a similar guy, different guy later because I wasn't as successful earlier. And you figure out like, okay, maybe I didn't figure out the right approach, but I know what the wrong approach was. And early on in my career, I was a lot more of that Bobby Knight type of guy. And it was, we're going to find players that fit into my box. This is how you coach. This is how you get them to perform. And it was really getting them into that box. And I think as I went on, that understanding was, it's not going to be a great experience for them or me or the team or anybody if you're just trying to shove them in there, whether they fit or not. And high school is different than college. You can't recruit guys that you want, right? You get the guys that you get, and you got to figure out how to get them to perform. So a lot of failures, during my time led to, I think, better results later, but it was about trying to figure out each individual person.
Yeah, same for me. I mean, I think it's about relationships, getting to understand the kids, building that level of trust with them. So you know that because you want them to feel safe, right? Like I'm not just getting on you to get on you. Like there's nothing personal, but when you're on the court, like I'm just trying to bring out your best. But to be able to do that, I think especially with kids this generation, like you do have to build that relationship off the court. Like I like to joke around with the kids and have fun. But when they lose focus, I'm gonna let them know, and we're gonna, pay the price to a certain extent, right? But I agree. It's definitely about relationships, and that's kind of how I view it in life in general, right? Like relationships are everything, and that if you build that and you nurture that, you foster that, like you should be good.
For all the parents whose kids are already in this game and in this world, where are the greater benefits? High school sports or club sports?
Basketball, I think, is different. Soccer, it's such a different thing. Because I've seen people go the soccer route and soccer play club only and all that, but it's weird because it's a different season than it is everywhere else, right? So high school in Hawaii in the soccer world is in the winter, but they can't play soccer in the winter everywhere else around the country. So soccer, girls soccer is it boys soccer as well? Both soccer sports are fall sports, right? Is that right? Anyway, it's different. So I think club does a lot to get you exposure, especially being in Hawaii in basketball and I think other sports like baseball. It gets you a lot of exposure outside. Volleyball as well. I mean, those sports that you're sending a lot of kids to college from Hawaii, and I think the Hawaii environment's different because college coaches are just not going to spend their money to come down here. Football, there's a lot of prospects. So they can come down here and get a lot of bang for their buck as far as seeing a lot of kids that are Division I caliber. So it's valuable. But coming down here, there might be at least from the boys side, one or two Division I's every couple of years from a basketball perspective. So from a college recruiting side, they're not going to spend that money. So to get out to the mainland, to put yourself in front of them rather than having them come to you, there is that value from the club perspective. And that's what a lot of programs are doing, right? From a volleyball club perspective, soccer club, basketball club, summers, off season, they're traveling. They're getting coaches to be there. They're putting them on their radar. And then the rest, they're sending tape of their high school seasons. But again, if that's what we're talking about as far as getting to college, if we're talking, my goal when I was playing, and I think it's the same approach with my kids, it wasn't a college scholarship. It was, I want my kid to have a great experience playing sports because I think sports is a huge development factor in their lives, especially in that time. And I wanted them to have a great experience, learn how to be a part of a team, learn to set a goal and do your best to work as a group to achieve it, and that experience I think is great. And so you have to put them in a lot of things early sometimes to be able to even make some of these teams. So that's the reason, is just to get them on a team, because I thought it was just I had such a great experience. I learned so much from it. It wasn't a money thing for me. It wasn't financial as far as getting them into college or getting a scholarship or whatever, playing pro. It's just, that's my approach now. It's just maybe they can make a team, have a fun experience, because I remember those things till today, 30 years later.
Can I ask something, Steph? So I wanted to ask you guys, and Dean, you talked about you have all this perspective, and Josh too, as players, as dads now, and as coaches. So, with the additional pressure, with social media, with comparing, all of that, I think pressure from parents, if we're being honest. Where can you guys comment on the importance or the rising importance of just the mental part of the game, the sports psychology part of it, the understanding while it's to explain to kids, why losing is part of it and it's a big learning opportunity as well, but how to pick yourself up and be resilient and have grit. How much do you think that's a bigger piece of the coaching and parenting when you have athletes in your house conversation now that we're adulting and coaching? Can you guys comment on that? Just the mental game and how to bounce back? Because and I'm saying this because in our house, as our kids are getting older, we're noticing that it's in a little different from the old school way of what, just get back up and go back in there. It's a little different, I think. But what do you guys think? Are we the only ones?
No, yeah, I think for sure, I mean, first of all, nobody likes to lose, right? Nobody wants to lose, and obviously we want to win. But, like I tell, my kids, it's like win or learn. It's not win or lose, right? It's only losing if you don't learn from it. Losing's part of the game. Like you have to lose to progress. There's no progress without setbacks, right? And so I think as parents, we need to understand that. As coaches, we need to understand that because like I was saying earlier, like no one is perfect. We're gonna have mistakes. We're gonna have turnovers. We're gonna have losses. That's part of the process. Like, and that's the beautiful part of it, right? In the moment, does it suck? Of course. But can I go back and learn at least one or two things from it? Absolutely. And I think if the quicker we can learn that, especially as parents, I feel like, and kind of use that to help our kids through it and pick them up. Primarily because kids, they don't like to lose either, right? And if we're just saying, oh, this sucks and we lost and all that, like they're going to feel that even more, and then we're distancing ourselves, I think, from them and the sport even more so I think a lot of good can come out of losing. It's just how you deal with it as a parent, as a coach. Again, no one likes to lose, right? But what can we learn from it, I think, is really how I look at it. Because I will go back and watch even these club games, 6, 7 graders, and I'll watch it like 5 times before I even go to sleep. And my wife is like, what are you doing? It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was like, no, I got to watch the game. Like, I got to figure out like why we lost and what happened here and all of that. Because I tell the kids all the time, like, hey, losses are ultimately on me. I didn't prepare you guys enough for the game, and we didn't execute. So I think when you look at it from kind of that perspective, that you can learn from losses, I think everyone starts understanding each other better.
Yeah. And I also want to say, in addition to just, I don't mean just only the losses. I mean, just a bad at bat. I mean, a missed shot, right? A bad layup, or not having the moment in front of you and not being able to be the guy or the girl, right? I also mean that like the team could still win, but just if you're that the player or your child is having a little, are they on the downswing, which happens. We're all human. We're not perfect, right? What are your thoughts, Dino?
Yeah, that it's so mental. A lot of the things that we say, and I don't know that they totally grasp it, right? Like the kids that I have are 9 and 11 years old and 8, and between those ages. And I think there's some magic, right? You see the kids that are coaches' kids, right? The ones that have grown up around sports. And we know friends that are that way. And you start to think, why is it that they seem to be more resilient? Why do they seem tougher in certain scenarios? And they go, oh, coach's kid. And it's not necessarily because the dad was or the coach was telling it directly to them all the time. I think it's a lot because they were hearing it a lot of time and they were seeing the result. They were seeing the successes. They were seeing the failures. And in their own mind, they're putting it together of, yeah, I want to be like that, or I don't want to be like that, or I'm going to respond in this way without even prompting them, right? It's this almost informal, organic, way of unconscious, subconscious way of them learning these things. And so when I have these kids, 8 to 11 or 12, it's saying these things to them, and talking about scenarios and putting them through it in certain times, and trying to frame it in the right way. Because again, to me, the more that they hear it, at some point it's going to make sense, or if they hear it enough, it's going to be something that they think about. And that allows them to grow mentally. And again, I think it's the same way where you see certain parents that really are strong in their values, and it's not as though they're saying it to their kids all the time. It's just the kids happen to inherit those values because their parents are modeling it. And it's the same, I think, coaching wise. And what, I think us as coaches are trying to do to them is just say these things that are important. Talk about effort, talk about attitude, talk about moving on to the next play, talking about focusing on the process rather than the result, and bringing up examples over and over, because there's failures in practice, there's failures in games. And it's just, hey, no, that's right. This is what you lock in on. You're going to miss again, So we've said it in practice before practice, after practice, who's going to mess up today? And the expectation is that everyone's hand is raised, and we do things where, there's a consequence if they succeed, if they fail, and we talk about what they need to be focused on while they're doing that. So again, the more times I think you expose them to it with examples that they can see, or examples that they can actually go through on their own, I think they just absorb it. And they start building that understanding of how to perform in certain situations. Maybe not everybody's going to take to everything, but they're going to be better. And that's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, this is such a treat, whether you guys know it or not, talking to both of you guys, just trying to tap into the coach's mentality. You guys are both successful coaches that I'm sure a lot of parents, after listening to this or even knowing and watching your guys' teams, may inquire to join. But also, whether you know it or not, just have mad appreciation for you guys, mad respect, and just thank you so much for all that you're doing out of your own time to invest in the development of our children. Growing up, I mean, I could say that sports played a huge role in my life and my development too. And, just recently, I've been seeing Coach Agena still, he doesn't do the clinics, but he's doing it at my hometown, Ho'o Valley, Booth Park, in the gym, because, I take my kids, swimming. And then I'm like, I hear yelling, and then I can hear the balls dribbling and faster. And then I peeked. I was like, what? And he's still going. And it's magical. It's really magical to watch, all that happening, and to see it being soaked in, them grasping it and then putting it to practice. And I can say the same for you guys. It's magical watching what you guys do with the kids, whether you know it or not. Just want to say thank you so much to you guys for spending time with us, for sharing your knowledge. I'm sure there's many more questions, right, Knowles and Brooke? I mean, we talk about sports a lot, right?
As I'm sure many parents do.
Yeah. Before we get out of here, Dax, your son Dax is on my team.
Mm-hmm.
And Dax, you're not there to see a lot of the practices, but Dax is the one. He's maybe one of the younger kids on our team. No, it's always when you're working.
Listeners, it's because I'm at work.
You're at work.
I'm there at the games.
You're there on Sundays, even after the marathon. But no, so Dax, and he's one of the younger kids, he's not big and, just running around knocking people over. And through the first month, maybe a little longer, 2 months, he struggled. And like I said, I hold kids accountable. And you may not know any other kid. If you're walking by our court and you heard names being yelled, everyone knew who Dax was, because Dax would get it, a lot. And you know what? We talked about it with him just the other day after practice, and his name is not coming up unless he's doing something well. And he's worked really hard. And those are the ones, like, for us as coaches, where we get to see like someone progress, right? You just don't think it's all for nothing, right? Where the kid is taking it in, we're hard on him, but he took it, he worked really hard, and then you see him improve, and then you see him succeed. I mean, those are a lot of the reasons why people get into coaching, because you build that relationship with them, and you don't know, like, are you being too hard on them? Are you not? But to see them take it and improve, and Dax was one of those guys, and he really, really made some huge jumps. You could tell he's working, and to see him smile when he, I'm telling him, like, bro, you've been working, huh? And he smiles about it, and it's exciting to see that. And I'm excited for him. I'm excited, again, in that short period of time that he just took it. So, I mean, that resilience that he showed has been spectacular.
Oh man, that means, and it's
Nice.
so good to hear that. Thanks, Dean, and and Josh too. And it's good because they can practice and practice even and see the older kids practicing right next door. So I think that he and the other kids have a lot of inspirational figures that they're surrounded by, and all different skill levels. So I think that plays a role too in just encouraging them to only improve and get better. And it's just all about that, sharing that same goal and working together as a team. And it's really awesome. It's really awesome, you guys. So just thank you so much. Knowles and Brooke, anything else you guys want to say?
Well, yeah, thanks, Coach Dean and Coach Josh. Like, what you guys are doing, and all the coaches out there, we appreciate the time and effort and the high blood pressure levels that you guys are exposing yourself to. But you know what? I all of us here, right? We all played sport. You'll never forget those coaches that made you feel good. Even the ones that make you feel bad, they did it for a reason, and your life changes because of it. So what you guys are doing is not only for sport, but for life and raising good kids out there. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll just echo that too. Thank you guys both. I know it's countless hours, but I'll say too that, we tell the kids too, you should be worried when your coaches stop yelling your name because the reason why they're yelling is probably because they see potential. They know you can do better, right? So you should be actually concerned when they stop talking about you or stop calling your name or stop saying good job. So that's good to hear. But thank you guys both for what you do in the community. It's we Noli and Steph and I talk about this a lot in our texts and just in person, that it takes a whole village, right, to raise all of our kids. So appreciative that you guys are out there, that we know you guys and that you're doing what you're doing, because it takes a village, truly. So thank you.
Yep. And of course I have to ask, but do you have any interest in returning as head coach of the Iolani basketball team?
Jeez.
I get the question. Right now, all my off time is filled with my kids, and that's the reason why I'm not doing it anymore. People speculated, oh, the stress that parents did this and that. Yeah, that was a thing, but it wasn't major. It wasn't that big of a deterrent. I think you accept parts of that going into the job, but it was to spend time with my family. And I know that I've been around enough kids that have get into the 7, 8, 9, 10, and you guys do have those Brooke and Noli kids that have gone even beyond that. And this period of time right now where they're 9 and 11, and when I stopped, I think they were about, I don't know, 6 and 4 or something like that, that they are happy to see you and want to give you hugs and actually listen to you and want to have conversations with you in the car. I know that doesn't last. I know that doesn't last. And I want to just maximize that as much as I can, at least through that period of time. But I also know when they hit these teens, or maybe even a little sooner, they may not want to talk to me. So the time that I have with them, I might have more time. And I might want to coach. And I always say this, I don't have any plan. Like, I want to come back. I need to coach my kids in high school or anything like that. Not at all. That being said, I don't close the door either. If it happens, it happens. If it, I don't know. That's the bottom line. I really don't know.
All you parents out there that are trying to make that decision whether to send your kids there to Iolani, you just the door's open. The door's open.
I think Steph's looking for an assistant coach job. That's why.
Yeah, Josh might be assistant coach, right?
Well, and I feel like
Josh and Steph, assistant coaches. Yes.
Dean's not doing too bad. See him on TV a lot there too. So
oh yeah,
yeah.
that's right.
He doesn't have that much free time.
Yeah. All right, guys. Again, it's been a treat. Thank you so much for
Right.
joining us on the Mothership podcast. Take care and be well. Take care of your high blood pressure.
Take care of your coaches.
Hug your
Thanks, guys.
coaches.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.